Are we at 11:15 and good to go? Okay. Okay. Good morning. Thank you very much. My name is George Smitherman. I'm the President and CEO of the Cannabis Council of Canada, the National Industry Association for licensed producers and processors of cannabis. We've seen recently in Smiths Falls, Ontario, in Olds, Alberta, the consequences of an administration of fees and taxes, which makes our industry largely unsustainable. Today there are 5 operators here, large, medium and small, from across the breadth of Canada, who will tell you just a bit about the circumstances that they're facing in the revitalization of the communities where they are. So thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jonathan Wilson. Thanks for having me. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of a very small yet exciting and growing and in-demand cannabis producer in beautiful Shediac Cape, New Brunswick, minutes away from the lobster capital of the world, Shediac. I'm here today, my first trip since the start of the pandemic, which should show you how truly important this is, to call for urgent action that reignites our cannabis industry and allows producers of all sizes, represented here with this panel, to flourish and to make good on the promises that were originally given with legalization. Without urgent action, all 3 of the main objectives are absolutely in serious jeopardy, which would be nothing short of tragic. Today we're advocating to the Government of Canada, including Health Canada, Canada Revenue Agency, to immediately take action, eliminate the extravagant annual regulatory fee of 2.3% on all top-line sales, and to initiate the excise tax regime that we've been asking for desperately. It's not only a significant burden for producers like us, but it's a barrier to entry for new producers to come into the legal market. The collective of producers here is going to share stories, experiences. We've had great meetings so far, but simply put, the time for action is now, and inaction can no longer be afforded, literally. Thank you. Merci.
Hello, good morning. My name is Margaret Brodie, and I am the acting CEO and CFO of Rubicon Organics, and we are a proudly Delta, British Columbia-based organization of 180 strong people full-time and about 50 additional part-time labor. We produce premium, organic, beautiful cannabis under our Simply Bare 1964 brands in British Columbia. And we are proud advocates of bringing the legacy market and people into cannabis and into the legal regulated market. But where we struggle is most of our top line goes right to the government, and it's making it uneconomic for businesses to continue, even those that are competing at the best in the best part of our nation. And Canada's losing the opportunity to win internationally based on the policies and regulation, the inaction that's been taken by government. So we'd really like today people to understand how wonderful this industry is, how wonderful the employees are, the people that are passionate about cannabis, how it helps and makes people feel good, and where we can go. Thanks.
Hello. I'm pleased to introduce myself to you today. My name is Mandesh Dosanjh, President and CEO of Pure Sunfarms, a wholly owned subsidiary of Village Farms International. Pure Sunfarms is the nation's top low-cost cultivator and best-selling brand of dried flower. Each day, over 700 people walk through our doors in Delta, British Columbia to work in our greenhouses. You're hearing from producers here today because we, as growers and manufacturers, sit at the heart of the cannabis supply chain. We need to be healthy in order for the whole system to thrive, but that's not our reality. Producers stand here in peril. Canadian cannabis is in peril. We never expected this industry to be easy, but we certainly never thought we'd find ourselves in this position we are today. Week after week, news of layoffs and closures dominate the headlines. As leaders, we feel sick for each job lost and door closed. We stay up at night analyzing our cost structures, thinking about the thousands of ancillary businesses and retailers that rely on us, and worrying about the jobs they too put at risk if we do not succeed. We know every facility shuttered is an asset that is permanently defunct. Spaces that will not invite future investment and reemerge to bring people back to work. I count Pure Sunfarms as one of the lucky ones who've been able to achieve consistent revenue growth and positive adjusted earnings since we came to market. Because of our management, we have also had to experience our own share of cutbacks last year as we anticipated a very difficult 2023. At the outset of legalization, the government made a promise to Canadians to keep taxes on cannabis low to support the objectives of legalization, keeping cannabis out of the hands of youth and profits out of the hands of criminals. We, as producers, built our business on the assumption that they were going to follow through on their promises. But in the end, they were promises the government forgot to keep. We are an industry consistently overlooked, a sector subject to crushing taxes and enormous regulatory burdens. And for producers who can afford to pay all these taxes and fees, there's nothing left over to invest back in our business. What's happening and will continue to unfold is not consolidation, it's carnage. It has massive implications. Those operating conditions favor the proliferation of illegal operators who have no reason to come over to the regulated market. Vendors and suppliers will begin to face their own bankruptcies and closures, and the loss will be felt most acutely in small towns across Canada where employers worked hard to bring abandoned facilities back to life with even more jobs for those communities. All communities will be affected in one way or another. I think it's okay to admit that we as a country were wrong with our basic assumption on how a legalization would roll out. The government has made cannabis a business that is very difficult to be in. We don't stand a chance, but we have the opportunity to make a course correction in our next federal budget. The visibility of our industry is squarely in the government's hands. We've been asking for excise reform for years. Now is the time. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lennie Walser. I am a pharmacist by trade, but I am here as president of TRURO Cannabis. We are a brand TRURO Cannabis out of the town of Truro, Nova Scotia, population of about 18,000 people. We consider ourselves rural. We are a private entity, probably small, mid-sized craft would be our definition. I wanted to share support from the news that we heard of the larger public entities and the tragic entities that have lost some jobs. I'm here trying to protect the 80 jobs for my community, those families, and also trying to come up with some sort of opportunity for a return on investment for our 30 private shareholders. That is pretty much why I'm here. What happened to Smith Falls can happen to any entity in Canada, regardless of the size. So I just wanted to come share my support. There is federal and provincial regulations that both need to be worked on. There is solutions. We just need folks talking. Obviously, the taxes are a major factor, illicit market, and that's all been pointed by my colleagues here. But I just want to share my support, show some public transparency that our data is not in the public eye because we're not a public entity, but it does resonate with us as well.
Good morning. My name is Niel Marotta. I'm the President and CEO of Indiva Limited. We are based in London, Ontario. We have almost 200 employees, and we've grown our business substantially over the last few years to become the national leaders in edible sales and production. But our business, as successful as we've been, is facing a risk to its sustainability, largely due to regulatory fees and excise taxes. The Canadian cannabis industry still has the opportunity to be global leaders. It's not too late to make the changes that we require to make sure that not just Indiva, but the entire industry remains sustainable. Thank you.
Bonne journée à tous. Mon nom est Pierre Killeen. Je suis le vice-président des affaires législatives et réglementaires du Conseil canadien du cannabis. Je suis ici pour répondre à toutes vos questions en français. Mais aujourd'hui, vraiment, vous avez entendu de la situation grave, de la crise financière et des implications pour le succès du projet de la légalisation du cannabis au Canada. Cette situation vraiment est le résultat d'un niveau de taxation de nos produits excessifs, d'une marge au-delà de 37 à 50 d'un cadre réglementaire excessif qui a cédé quasiment 2/3 du marché des produits comestibles au marché illicite et de la concurrence débridée du marché illicite. Nous sommes ici pour faire un appel au gouvernement fédéral à l'avance du budget fédéral pour des mesures de secours pour notre industrie. Ces mesures touchent principalement sur l'élimination des frais réglementaires de Santé Canada, des frais qui ont une envergure de au moins 100 millions de dollars par année en frais réglementaires payés par les producteurs autorisés. Et deuxièmement, la réforme du cadre du droit d'assises. Je suis ici pour répondre à vos questions en français et mes collègues sont ici aussi pour vous répondre en anglais. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. You've heard from five diverse operators employing well over 1,000 Canadians of the challenges that are being faced. We'd be most happy to address any questions that you might have.
We'll now start the question period. We'll start with questions in the room and then we move on to Zoom. For the people on Zoom, if you have a question, please use the raise hand function. And as usual, one question and one follow-up. Please go ahead in the room.
Thank you. Hi, Rachel Haynes from CTV National News. I'll ask this question to Mr. Smitherman, but if anyone else would like to respond as well, please feel free. Do you believe that the legislation as it currently has been written has also left the door open for unlicensed operators to thrive? And how much of an issue has that been for your industry?
It actually, I think, feels largely to our regulated sector that if you put up your hand and say you're willing to be regulated, they have every fee and tax for you. But if you choose to operate illegally just on the other side of the line, very rarely does anybody have attention for you. In my home city of Toronto, we're seeing a proliferation of illegal retail stores as an example. Anyone else wish to comment?
And is that part of your pitch to the government as well? Because when you think about all of the revenue that governments are taking in from the taxes that you're mentioning, what necessarily would be the incentive for governments right now to change their regime?
Well, the incentive really ought to be the fulfillment of the public health objectives which underscored the policy in the first place. The principle amongst them, the elimination of the illicit market. So that's a strong motivation for everybody to want to participate in the elimination of that market. Put another way, we've only captured about half of all of the cannabis marketplace in Canada in the legal realm. The statistics are a bit challenging, but our assessment says half. This says to governments, hey, if we reduce our fees and burdens, now we can together actually grow the pie and encourage more participation of the Canadian cannabis consumer on the legal side of the line. Anyone else on this?
I think I would just add one point to that.
Please.
Thank you. I would add one point to that, which is, yes, there was oversupply and overbuilding in the industry, but that was on the basis that more consumers would move into the legal channels. Because there's been no crackdown or impact on the illegal sector and the black market, it's been really hard for companies that are taxed and spending so much time. You know, our company, Rubicon Organics, has 13 people on its own in our quality assurance group. We take care and pride in what we do to put out a really quality product. And it's very frustrating when you can go on and type in weed near me and have it delivered very quickly for a quarter or half of the price. So.
And you talked about onerous fees and the regulatory burden. Can you give us an idea of, and I think you did mention it in French, like how high are these taxes? What is the regulatory burden that you're talking about?
I'm going to get Mandesh to actually tell you how high the taxes are as opposed to what was predicted back in the day. I want to just speak to the regulatory fee issue first, though. What we've highlighted to Health Canada and others in the government is that we're paying a regulatory fee which was premised on a profitable industry and which tobacco and alcohol don't pay. So we're here in a situation with dire forecasts about future circumstances, but where one of the things that we're paying is a 2.3 tax that was tacked on and would be an illustration of good faith to see the cannabis sector treated the same as, say, alcohol and tobacco. I do understand that a few years ago around here they contemplated the implementation of a tobacco regulatory fee, but they never did it. We've got one, and this year it will probably cost us about $100 million collectively. On the price?
Thanks, George. Great question. Just to frame that, for every dollar of revenue, every producer pretty much starts with only being able to collect 28 cents of that dollar. So 72 cents of that dollar is sent to a government agency in one form or another. Excise tax, income tax, property tax, payroll taxes, provincial markups and fees collected. So we start with 28 cents. To answer your question squarely on the excise tax, for Pure Sunfarms, our effective excise tax rate for last year was 37%. much higher than the excise tax rates faced in both the tobacco industry and the alcohol industry. And while there's lots of questions around how we've built this sector and the responsibilities we have as entrepreneurs and leadership, we go back to the original government mandate set out in 2017 that said one of their mandates was to keep taxes low in order to keep product out of the hands of youth and combat the illicit market. And my question back to this federal government is a 37% excise tax low? And I think the answer is no.
And what specifically would you like, if whoever wants to answer, what specifically do you want the government to change, presumably in the budget that's coming up?
Well, I think that the budget presents an opportunity for the government of Canada to send a message about its commitment to the sustainability of our sector. That certainly needs to involve reform to excise, which of course the national government would need to do in concert with provinces and territories. We would also say that the regulatory fee stands as a very, very good example of something that the federal government in their own right can, I'm going to say, quote unquote, easily eliminate. It's within their reach, and we've highlighted the discriminatory nature of it. Those would be a couple of areas where progress would be badly needed and widely expected, I would say. Thank you.
Once again, for the reporters on Zoom, feel free to use the raise hand function if you have a question. In the meantime, we'll keep taking questions in the room.
I do have another question as well. I think, Ms. Brodie, you mentioned a little bit about how large the production has grown over the couple of years. And I don't put this question to you, I put it to anybody, though, about, where does the fault lie as well with how quickly things have moved and how large licensed producers have grown so quickly. I mean, when you look around main streets in most cities, there are maybe 5 different stores selling either the same or different products. Where does the fault lie also in how quickly and how fast and large the producers have grown?
Well, great question. Thank you so much. I mean, the first thing I would say is that those retail stores are kind of a different end of the business, but we understand they're visible and therefore they're kind of a symbol. Over 200 of those stores have closed in Ontario already. Predictions of up to 500 this year, and hundreds more privately held stores in provinces like Alberta. So there is obviously market attrition that's occurring, and we face challenges as producers. It was a nascent industry, and obviously there are individual stories where you can say people made a misstep or thought X or Y or Z would occur. But what I brought today was 5 producers whose storyline is about the way they hit their marks. They're category leaders, small, medium, and large. They sell what they grow, and still there's nothing left at the end of the day. So I think really that's what we seek to highlight, that out of these hundreds of license holders, this really diverse mosaic of license holders that are found in communities, especially small, all across the country, that it's just not a model that's providing any opportunity for sustainability in the form of profitability. And at the end of the day, this especially matters not just for the jobs in the communities and our business interests, but if we are going to be successful in achieving the public health objectives of legalization, which includes the elimination of the illicit market, we have to have good, successful companies that are putting innovative products out there, because it's a fierce competition. And companies that are figuring that they're not sustainable are obviously not positioned to be able to fight that fight to gain more market share from the illicit market and to draw more positive conclusions about the achievement of these public health objectives.
And oh, sorry. Did you?
I was going to answer, just to add a little bit to that, just because it's a really good question, and I come from the spot of I'm the smallest producer here. We are striving to be craft, so we're not even there. There's micros and there's us. It's a nano. We're just getting to that point, but about to expand. The craft part, which is the thing that really differentiates those stores that are out there. And right now you're seeing 5 of those stores with the same products, but at the same time, the things that I mentioned, the barriers to entry of new craft growers are there, preventing those new products from coming in. That's where we have allowed ourselves to insert ourselves into the market, to be a market disruptor, to be a small portion, but to really get that word spread across. So then when you're limiting, limiting the amount of new entrants, and also kicking out some of the good ones that can't afford to stick around. That's where your diversity is going in your portfolio. And there's room for producers of all sizes. That's why I'm here to say that. Might not be in all categories, might be a mix, but there's room for everyone here. But if we start kicking out people that we've enticed to come in from the legacy market, both customers and producers alone, then we're not going to have that diversity, and we're not going to drive traffic to the stores. So.
I mentioned earlier, of course, like we have our national work to do. There's a federal budget, but all of these companies are working day in and day out with provincial distributors. We have 13 different models that have emerged in the great Canadian way, and there are a lot of barriers to entry market for new products and for new companies, and that's tomorrow. That's tomorrow's work. Like we have everywhere you look, someone's put up a fee or a regulatory barrier or burden that in their collective sense really just making it impossible for our sector to make the progress that was expected and to be sustainable for the long run.
And just as a follow-up to that, this press conference is coming just about a week after Canopy Growth announced a large number of job cuts. So maybe I'll put this question to one of the producers, but is your company, are they planning on making the same cuts? And how deep are the job losses and closures across the board expected to be?
Thank you for that question. So I mentioned in my remarks that we made the decision to do a reduction in our workforce. It amounted to just around 10%. And we did that in advance of understanding the landscape of what we were facing then and what we thought would be a very difficult 2023 without an action from the government or any major changes in regulatory reform. Where we sit today, our plan is to continue to weather the storm and ride out the industry as is. There's no immediate plans for any reductions now because we've done those reductions and we've been very focused on our cost controls and revenue management to make sure we can weather this storm. And I think it's in exactly that what we're trying to highlight to the government. As a best-in-class operator who has proactively made decisions ahead of a mass culling in the industry, we are still struggling. And we would like that business model and case to be presented, communicated, reinforced at this federal government to say, if we're having challenges and my peers are all here having challenges, there are mass challenges that need to be faced. So I'll allow anyone else to come.
Yeah, sure.
As I said in my statement, that's why I came. It's not because all large public entities wasted their funding. We were small, we were lean, we growed with scale. But am I going to be here in 3 years if I'm just fighting for break even or marginal profit, no return for my shareholders? Not likely. And remember, inflation, our costs keep going up and our value for the product keeps going down. So that's why I came here today, just again, to help educate that we don't want the tragedies that are happening in these communities to happen to us.
One thing I would just offer, I mean, there will be closures, there will be consolidations, but here's one rather sobering data set. There are about 300 companies, licensed producers in Canada, that have an account with CRA to remit excise. 70% of those companies are in default of those payments. So if ever there was a canary in the coal mine, or use whatever expression you want, over at CRA, they've got the default list, which surely is an indicator of how tough it is out there, because I think we'd all agree you don't not pay your taxes as an easy decision. And this really also creates an alignment of interest between the government and the cannabis industry to see these models adjusted, because that default list is a very, very significant issue over at CRA.
I don't see any questions online. Are there any other questions in the room?
I'll just ask one last one. Have you raised this with government so far? What has been the reaction so far? Do you see any willingness on the part of the government to give you some of what you're asking for?
Thank you. Well, really, we've been raising since 2020 with Health Canada, our primary regulator, the constraints that the sector was under. And they did some survey work subsequently to validate that. So yes, like we've been on the bandwagon. Much more significantly, starting last May with a report that we released from EY, from Ernst & Young, we've been really seeking to increase awareness in what I describe as official Ottawa of our circumstances. We've made a lot of progress. We've been banging on many of the right doors of the decision makers that are involved in the budgetary process. And obviously, you know, these are important days as the budget's being crafted. I don't want to create say an expectation so far of what might be possible, but I'm here to tell you that we've definitely done a much better job of raising the circumstances. The other thing I would say is that the Canopy announcement, especially I think the implication for the community of Smiths Falls, where there was so much potential, really I think was a bit of an eye-opener for some people in the regulatory decision-making environment. So we're going to continue to press forward, and you know, we're hopeful that the budget will show some evidence of our efforts to raise awareness. Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Appreciate it.